My name is Anja Cain. I am an advanced level instructor and interactive vaulting instructor, and in my second year as the program director at Charleston Area Therapeutic Riding in Charleston, South Carolina, a premier accredited center that has been open for about 27 years. So, herd observation, how did this come about? The topic developed out of a sense of pressure, I would say, and a necessity that is probably familiar to many of you in the center, at your own centers, when it comes to horses being retired, for example, but not leaving the property. Never ever. They are there, what can they do? How can we still offer them that connection that they had all their working lives? How can we relieve some of the pressure that is on our working TR horses that are surrounded by people, sidewalkers, leaders, and how can we prevent burnout? The topic of burnout we heard about yesterday in our horses, and honestly in our instructors. Where can we take some of this pressure off? I think this is how I probably always started thinking about this and exploring. And I met Kim, or let's say I knew about Kim for quite some time before I ever met her in person. I had learned through her online offerings, her virtual courses and material that is out there, and had tried for quite some time to incorporate some of that. And when it came down to, okay, we really want to develop content, curriculum, or a package of ideas for unmounted work, I reached out to her. She's local to us. She's just around the corner, and she really helped us develop a program that we call Connecting with Horses. And I am a little nervous today because I will be talking about something that is really completely new to me, that we just started. This is a pilot program that we have just run through the first 12 weeks. But I still feel it's so important, and it has done so much for us, that I would like to share with Kim kind of the beginnings of it. Where did this all start? What was the most helpful aspect of it? And that is clearly herd observation, stepping back, observing. And Kim is gonna take it from here, and she's the expert today. I am going to talk about things that as they pertain to Cater and to the programming and how that all looks like for us at the moment. But it's all new to us and outside of our what is it called? Yeah. Comfort zone. Yes.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? All right. Thank you, Anja. As Anja said, well, first of all, welcome. Got a beautiful morning for this. I'm so excited. And thank you from those of you who are from Great Oak for letting us partner with your herd this morning. So my name is Kim Hallin, and I actually run a for-profit equine experiential learning business outside of Charleston, South Carolina. It is not I'm not PATH certified. It's not a PATH-centered, PATH-certified organization, so I just want to be clear about that. I'm sort of way outside the box. And what I really want you guys to do today is just sort of take off your hats for now of what you normally do, and you get to be the participants who are learning in this and just seeing things from a different perspective. And then you get to decide what you want to take from it, what might be useful for you, or what might not. And this is just going to be a taste of a different way of not only interacting with your horses, but potentially incorporating it into your programming or even building a business. So I guess the easiest way to say what was really different about my business, I call it is equine experiential learning, but I came at it from the beginning from wanting to build a business that was as horse-centered as possible. And Now, those are words that we hear a lot, horse-centered. But part of the reason that I did not go down the path of certification or anything like that is because I personally haven't found that there is a program or a certification program or even very many equine experiential learning programs out there right now that are truly built to be horse-centered and to put the horse first. So I wanted to see, could I do this? Could I make a business out of this? So all of my programming is built around being able to put my herd first. And my herd, my personal horses, I have 3 in my herd right now, and a potbelly pig. He's part of the business as well. But my horses are not your typical program horses you would find in equine experiential learning. One of my mares has a history of aggression. All of my horses have, I believe actually, honestly, all domestic horses have trauma pasts. Living in the domestic world is inherently challenging for horses, right? Horses were born to be wild, like that's what horses were. So that the world that we live in and we have them live in is challenging for them. So we talked, one of the presentations I was in yesterday was about trauma-informed practice, and it was interesting. I do work from a trauma-informed perspective, both with the participants, but actually with the horses. So a lot of the things we talked about, how do you approach people in a trauma-informed way? Is it possible to approach horses in a trauma-informed way? And so I don't do any kind of programming that doesn't allow me to put the horses first. It doesn't mean I don't put participants first also, but if it's programming that doesn't allow me to put my particular horses first with their gifts and limitations both, then I don't do that type of programming. So I have ended up doing 90% of what I do is observation-based. That doesn't mean that we don't ever interact with the horses, but we always start like this outside of the pasture, and we do a lot of observation. And my program is based in kind of 2 questions. First is, what is a horse? And then, who is the horse in front of us? Who are each of these horses? And we think we know those as equestrians. We think we know what a horse is, but I think I'm probably gonna say some things today that you'll be like, I never knew that. I spent my whole life, with horses in a more traditional ways, and realized that, one, there was a lot of stuff I never learned, nobody ever taught me, and then there was a lot of stuff that I was taught that isn't true, that is accepted as standard practice, standard knowledge, even in natural horsemanship. It is not actually true about horses from an ethological perspective. So I think you might have the book, Lucy Reese's book. I've not had the privilege of spending a lot of time with wild horses, but I've done a lot of studying. And this particular book, by Lucy Reese, is called Horses and Company. And she is one of the world's best ethologists, and she's collected a lot of evidence from wild horse herds around the world to say what is common in truly wild herds. So that's what I wanted to start with. I wanted to start with understanding what is a horse naturally, not what have we taught about horses, what is a domestic horse, what is a program horse, but what is a horse from an evolutionary and ethological perspective. And that's what I teach on. In doing that, I also draw a lot of, we talk about how our domestic horses are different than wild horses, how they're the same, what's similar, and also how a lot of the behavior issues that we see in domestic horses are because the way that we're asking them to live and operate is so different from what they were actually evolved to be that they can't cope. So they're coping strategies. And when we talk about that and people can see the horses demonstrating these coping strategies, it makes us realize that we have a lot of the same coping strategies. The domestic world is also very challenging for humans. It's also very unnatural for humans. So there's actually a lot of things that we recognize in the horses that participants then open up and say, oh my gosh, I relate to that so much. That's hard for me too. So that's one of the ways just observing can be therapeutic. All right, let me back up a little. One thing I want to say that's really interesting is when it was just us out here, the horses were kind of in the middle of the field mostly. They were eating the hay a little bit, and one of them was sleeping. The red horse in this pasture is obviously in the resource guarding hierarchy, and I'm going to talk about what that is. He's at the top for sure. They were kind of all doing their thing, just really relaxed. Then as you all gathered, they all came forward, right? Which is really interesting. And I think says a lot about the fact that they're program horses, that they understand that a lot of the activity here is about them, right? They were curious about everything. And then once I started talking, who knows why, but did you notice that they've all kind of moved further away? One of the other horses over there got real interested. So as I talk and as we are having this session, notice what the horses behind us are doing, because they actually are they respond to our energy. So one of the things I wanted to start with is a little bit of a breathing exercise, right? This is a lot of energy, a lot of different people's energy here, and it could even be that, like Anja said, she's a little nervous, we're a little anxious, like the energy shifted when we moved into presentation mode from a much more natural, relaxed energy to a more formal energy. So move around a little bit, move your bodies a little. Y'all are sitting, and we're just gonna, you can use any kind of breathing exercise, but whenever I start with people, especially before we come closer to the horses, which you guys are probably gonna stay where you are today, but I like to get centered, because the energy out there, if you look out there, what are some words you would describe the energy out there? Peaceful, calm, right? What was that? Curious, right? But it's very calm and centered, isn't it? So we would like to get as close to that as we can as a group. So as much that we don't do a whole lot of talking and side conversations, let's try to stay centered and keep our energy. But if you'll just close your eyes for a minute, and one of my favorite breathing exercises is going to breathe in for the count of like 5, but as you breathe in, I want you to envision clean, fresh air coming in. So let's breathe in for 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then as you breathe out, I want you to imagine like all the toxic energy, stress, anxiety. I like to envision it gray or black. Long breath out, and just out with any toxic energy. And then breathe in clean, pure. Breathe out the stress, anxiety. Let's do one more. Breathe in clean, fresh air. And then let out any stress, toxic energy, anxiety, worry, guilt, whatever. All right. I want you to also feel the ground underneath you. Whether it's under your feet, whether you're sitting, feel how firm and just solid it is. It's holding you up. Horses are always very connected to the earth. The earth's always there supporting them. It's always there supporting you. And then can also do something that's a little bit of a sensory exercise. So we're out in this beautiful sun. I want you to notice how the sun feels on your skin. Notice how it feels different where your skin is exposed versus where you have clothes on. Notice how the breeze feels. Notice what sounds you hear. See if you can focus on a sound that's really far away. And then see if you can notice a sound that's really close. Notice how the air smells. Is it different than where you typically are? And then if you have your eyes closed, when you open them, I want you to just notice where your gaze naturally falls. Where does your focus land? And then I want you to see if you can pick something much farther away to look at. Way far away, and focus on it. So this is the world that horses are living in. Sensory presence. We're usually in our thoughts, right? We're thinking about things. They are much more in the present moment, and they're noticing how everything feels. This is part of being a prey animal. But one thing I want to mention, we always talk about how horses are prey animals and humans are predators, right? We hear that a lot. It's true that horses are completely prey animals. They don't hunt any other animals. Humans are predators, but we're also prey animals. Nobody likes to talk about that very much. We've kind of become apex predators, which is a predator that doesn't have any other predator. But if you take away our tools, our weapons, our technology, we can be very vulnerable too. We would be prey in our wild state some of the time. So humans actually have a lot of ability to connect to prey animal instinct, and it's healthy and natural. We tend in the domestic world, in our civilized world, to sort of look down on those aspects of ourselves as weak, or we judge those. But those are huge survival skills, and they're very important. So horses know that we are predators, primarily because a couple things. We're upright. Usually only predators are upright. Our eyes are in the front and focus forward with binocular vision. That's another feature of a prey animal. A predator, that's a feature of a predator. Prey animals all have wide set eyes. So the horses' eyes are set on the side, and they have monocular vision, which means they see separately out of each eye. Horses do have one area where they have binocular vision. So their eyes are wide. They look forward like this, so about 6 feet in front of them is where their two eyes can focus. That's where they have the best depth perception. How many of you knew that? It's one of the few places that they have good depth perception. So if you're working with obstacles with a horse, it's very important that a horse is able to decide for itself. It's just a strip here where they have that really good depth perception. That they have freedom of their head to be able to put their head where they need to be able to tell how far away that is. They also don't have much vision at all underneath their heads, underneath their bodies. They see almost 360 degrees around. They don't see up above them very well, and they don't see below them very well. So this is one of the ways that horses are very different than us, and we should keep it in mind. Horses evolved to be in this grazing position. The only reason horses have long necks, the only reason, is because they evolved to be grazing animals. If you look at the way their long heads, so they're in the wild, they'll be in that position. Anybody know how many hours a day horses will graze, wild horses? It's typically around 16, 18 hours a day. They'll be in this position. This is ergonomically the healthiest, most rehabilitative, best body posture for a horse. To be down in the grazing position, and also if you watch them, I love how now they're not at the hay piles. They graze, they move. There's gentle movement all the time. They don't stand stationary. So it's like they'll step with one foot, step, right? Very slow motion all day. It activates their parasympathetic nervous system, their rest and digest nervous system. Weaving is like a displaced behavior that's because they weren't able to do that. They're trying to calm themselves, and it's become just a addictive, bad behavior. Some ethologists believe cribbing is a result of horses that were weaned before they were ready. So this too early or not, it's just like children. Not every horse is ready to be weaned at the same age, right? So they either were weaned before they were ready or moved into too stressful a situation, and they wanted to find something to suck, comfort suck. So horses will nurse for nutrition, but then they also, as they get older, they just go to mom for a comfort nurse, right? So they're trying to find something to suckle on, and they somehow figured out, they sucked air, they got that same endorphin, that becomes addictive. I don't know for 100% truth that is the source of cribbing, but it's interesting that cribbing is found all over the world in domestic horses, and a lot of them do it. And the way that we wean horses in the domestic world is very different than in the wild. In the wild, a baby horse would stay with its natal band until it's 2 or 3 years old. So, very different than their natural lifestyle. So some of these displaced behaviors are probably because of how we keep horses and their attempts to cope with that. So the other thing about the grazing position is, so a horse's head, pretty heavy, right? You ever been knocked by one? Had to hold one up when they're sedated? 20, 30 pounds. Horses do not have, like, we can lean our chin on our, right? We can do this. We can do many things and our heads are right aligned above us. Very easy to hold that head. Think if your head is way out on a long neck and you're having to hold it up. So most of you probably know what the nuchal ligament is that runs from like the pole all along the top of the neck to just behind the wither. This ligament is like a rubber band. And then it attaches to another ligament that runs through the spine. That nuchal ligament, when a horse's head is up high, so even the horse that's got his head over the fence right now, that nuchal ligament is pretty slack. Okay? So he's using muscles to hold up his head. When a horse sleeps in a standing position, where's the head and neck? Like right even, the pole is about even with the top of the withers usually, right? So as the head lowers, that's exactly where the rubber band is just taut enough that guess what? No effort required to hold their head in that position. That's why they can sleep like that. Plus they lock their legs. As the head goes down below that, the weight of the head, gravity, pulls it down. That nuchal ligament is stretched tight. As that stretches tight, it helps to also stretch the spine. Gives a little bit of space, right? So that is why that body position is so therapeutic for the horse. Also, when they're in this position, do they have more weight on their forehand or their hind end? Forehand. We always talk about it's best for horses to be on their back on, the weight on the hind end. Natural is at least 60 to 70% on the front end. That's how their body was actually built. This position also takes a lot of pressure off their hocks, their stifles, their hips, sacroiliac joint, all of that. So this is very therapeutic. The more time you can give your horses and turn out and grazing where they're just naturally, best thing for their bodies. Also good for their feet. I was never taught any of that in the horse industry. So again, any questions about any of that so far? All right. Let's talk a little bit about their behavior. So horses are prey animals. Horses are grazing animals. Actually, I want to talk a little bit more about the grazing. As prey animals, they could live in a constant state of fear and anxiety, right? We would, because that's the way our brains work. Horses actually, all of their behavior and a lot of their body functions are designed to activate that rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system to calm them. So horses are constantly working on not being stressed. This is a huge revelation for a lot of the participants in my program who think, maybe I do 30 minutes of yoga a day, but I'm still really stressed out. Why is that not enough? And they're beating themselves up over why they're stressed all the time. Horses work on calming all the time. That's their primary job when they're out in the wild. So grazing, not only does the head down activate the parasympathetic nervous system, each horse has its own rhythm of biting with its front teeth, right? They break it off. As we already talked about, this motion, graze, step, graze, very relaxing. As they bite off the tips of the grass, this grass is pretty short, so it's not a whole lot. But then they move the grass or the hay back to the back part of their teeth. Then they do that grinding motion. Very strong grinding motion, right? You know what that does? It sends a massage up their neck. Very relaxing. They're not just eating out there. Grazing calms them. The other thing they're doing is they're deciding where they want to be in relation to each other. This is a herd that obviously trusts each other. They feel very safe together. But look at their spacing right now. Almost pretty even. Those two are a little closer. Horses are constantly having a conversation. Some of it's just energetic, some of it's more body language, about their personal space boundaries. This is what they talk about all the time. It is never random where horses are in a pasture. Now that I have spent thousands of hours observing horses, I used to think it's where the best hay is or where the best grass is. That's actually usually not their primary motivation. If they're first being turned out and you put out fresh hay, yes, they're going to be excited about that new hay that got put out. But this hay that's out, there's still some hay over here. They're now eating at a hay pile. But it's more to do with, again, you notice they're all over there. I don't know what that is exactly right now, but that's a clear choice they've made. Now, as I said it, one turned here to, you will also notice that they will respond to what I'm talking about. Taking a little poo there. But they are very, very respectful of personal space. As I was watching earlier, for about 20 minutes, it was pretty easy to tell. I know that the red horse is out of this group high in the resource guarding pecking order, or hierarchy, And I want to talk about that because herds do have a hierarchy, but we get taught that it's all about that. This is a hot one for me. There is a resource guarding hierarchy. The purpose of that hierarchy is to maintain as much peace and order in the herd as possible. And it's triggered by high-value resources. In the wild, a herd, grass is everywhere. Air is everywhere. They don't use their resource guarding hierarchy very often. Only when they have to. In the domestic world, we create lots of situations that cause them to have to resort to it. It is not their preferred way of operating or organization. They're perfectly capable of it. They have a hierarchy. They know what it is in case they need to use it. In the domestic world, they need to use it fairly often. It's what we see and we put our perception on it, but it is not the normal operating mode for horses. Now that's different than probably what you've all been told. And they also do not, it's not a power struggle, it's not a control struggle. It is honestly just so that they can peacefully maneuver what's a stressful situation for them of having to share. Horses are very particular about their personal space boundaries. The minimum is a horse length around a horse, is the minimum. That is, you are in their personal space without a doubt. A lot of horses it's much bigger. Depending on situations, it can be much bigger, right? So right now, they've all asked permission to be there, so the black horse just moved a little. Did you see the donkey move away? Right? That is not him being aggressive. That was just I'm going to your space. Now this little donkey I've noticed seems to piggyback on the red horse's high status in the hierarchy. I picked that up right away. I don't really know what the donkey's status is on his own, but they've got a partnership. They did an alliance. He's like, I'm going in with him, right? And nobody's messing with the red horse, so they have that agreement. They have a friendship. Horses develop friendships. In the wild, very, very selective about who they live with, and then they're pretty loyal. There are circumstances that can break up a loyal band. So within a herd would be hundreds of horses over a very large territory. And then you have bands. Bands are either going to be a natal band, which is usually one breeding stallion, and anywhere from 1 to 7 or 8, maybe a few more mares, and their offspring. That's the natal band. And then you have bachelor bands. So a bachelor band is, as I said, the youngsters will stay in the natal band till they're about 2 or 3. The horses that raise them will not have any hanky business. So once they start, getting sexually mature, wanting to find a mate, all that, they're either going to wander off on their own and find a mate, or the natal band's going to say, time for you to move on, right? And the young males typically will join a bachelor band or create one, may stay in a bachelor band their whole life, may eventually pair up with a young female, or inherit or even take over, although there's not as much hostile takeover as you hear about. The most successful band stallions are actually the ones that have the best diplomacy skills, have the best relations even with neighboring stallions, and the mares tend to, the most popular breeding stallions and the ones that have the most loyal mares are the ones who are the best relationship builders. They have a very stable environment to raise young. They have the highest success rate at raising young to maturity. Mares typically, there's always those mares that like the bad boy, just like there is anywhere else, I guess. But most of the mares want as stable an environment as possible to raise their young, and so they don't want a stallion that's going to pick fights a lot. They want a stallion that knows how to avoid fights, has good relationships. So again, a lot of these things are myths. So the two, I want to talk again about that little friendship. Do you see how their bodies are lined up parallel? Grazing. Well, the donkey just moved a little bit. One of the quickest ways for you to know when you look out at a herd who's like bonding with who in this moment, who's having a friendship, is are their bodies aligned. So actually the donkey that's behind him and even the halflinger behind him, they're all lined up in the same direction. Do you see this? Their bodies? Those 4, actually, but at least the 3, the donkey's kind of front donkey's doing his own thing. But they're all in alignment right now. They're all having a moment of bonding. The one that's grazing, he's closer to some of them, but he's facing the other direction. He's not as bonded. This one's totally having his own time, right? It's like when you're just like, I need to go over here and have some space, time to myself. So you can look out and see that's what's happening. This little donkey turned around. He's still obviously connected with the red one, but we'll see what happens. He's also maybe, believe it or not, connecting the other black horse because he's lined up with him. So he's almost playing as an intermediary to connect these two groups right now. Every move they make is intentional. They are not just randomly eating. And this question, so here's the halflinger, and I haven't really been able to figure out. He pushes the female donkey around, but that's the only one I've seen him move around. Is that correct? Out of this herd? Okay. But he just aligned himself with the red horse as is starting to, kind of trying to say, I want to be in your energy. How many horses that are pushy? Okay. A lot of times we're taught that this is a respect issue. It's possibly a respect issue, but usually horses are pushy because humans have not respected their personal space. If I've never had my personal space respected, honored, I don't really understand what that means for others. When a horse comes up to me and is in my space, what I take that is that horse is asking me, when we meet someone, we say, hi, how are you? Horses say, hi, who are you? And to them, that means, what is your personal space boundary in this moment? That's what they're asking. So if a horse comes into me and is pushy, it's one of two things. Either I'm not being clear, they can't sense what my personal space boundary is, or they not used to having personal space be something that's part of their vocabulary. People just maybe walk all up into their personal space all the time without permission, so they don't know that this is a thing. Maybe they haven't been socialized well by a herd. So how I have a conversation with those, I don't push them back if I can. It's not a power struggle. If a horse is coming at me with an energy that feels a little bit pushy, and I feel that, I'm going to start backing up. When that horse hits a point where I'm like, I think that's close enough for you, I'm going to say that's close enough, and I'm going to do it 2 or 3 times. Usually if I take a few steps, and I'm very clear saying, this is how much space I want. Usually after about 3 or 4 steps, the horse goes, now I understand where your boundary is. That's not the horse winning, because I moved my feet. That was what I was always taught. They just want clarity. Clarity what? With kindness. Clarity with kindness. When these horses, when one of them moves away, they're not only offering respect, but they're saying, I don't want you that close in my personal space either. Like, moving away doesn't mean you lost. It means it's clarity. And so this is one of the things that's very profound for participants. You always have the power to walk away. You always have the power to create more space if you're in a situation that's uncomfortable. If I don't like the energy a horse is bringing to me, I'm not going to let that horse bring that energy to me. And that means a lot to them, because they usually are coming because they want to interact with you. They're interested in you. So when you're clear about what those boundaries are. So that's just another thought. But as you watch horses, I want you to notice how often, sometimes even the one that's high on the hierarchy, I don't like the word dominant, but will often choose to move away or create space. It's not always this power struggle. He's not out there pushing everybody around right now, is he? That's what a bully would do. That's what a dominant-minded animal would do. They do it for clarification and to honor each other's space. So tell me a little bit about, so the horse, is that the newer horse to the program, the one that's way out there? Okay, newer, all right. So he's taking a lot of time to himself. He was integrated in the herd some, but have you ever gone to a new community, and it's a lot of work, kind of, isn't it, to get to know all the people and their energy and everything? So for him, I don't know, this is just me looking at them for just a few minutes, but he was interacting with them, he was filling it out, and then maybe he's kind of like, that's a lot of work still not real familiar with everybody, not sure where I belong. So he's spending a good amount of time over there and he's kind of in that definitely almost napping head position. I can't see his eyes to know. If I were closer, there's also, sometimes they go a little internal, where they sort of check out. So I'm not sure if he's moving or checking out. His ears are still going. I'm talking to you, yes. So that's one thing I would watch with him a little bit, to see, does he re-engage, does he check out or not.
Has he been with the other guys?
He was earlier, kind of in there, yeah, he was. Oh, has he been with the ones on the other side of the fence? I don't know the answer to that. But you bring up a great point. He is actually, or either he's lined up with the other dark horse in the other pasture, or that horse is lined up with him. body position-wise. Fences are something we think about. They may be trying to bond with horses that are in one of the other pastures. The fences don't really mean the same thing to them as they do to us. And that's something you could notice with him. If, as you see him out, you see him often lining up with one of the ones over there, he might be telling you, I would like to be with that horse versus this one. Another very important factor that's stressful for horses is that we choose who we put out with who. We do it based on what's easy for us. Are they getting along? Is there no funny business? Maybe I only think it's just easier to put all the geldings together. I don't like that. I've heard all kinds of different things. But we're not giving them the choice of who they want to be with. That's stressful. I have 3 horses that live on a 3-acre farm right now. I had 5 on 3 acres at one time. Compared to the wild, this is a very, very small space. It's like being in a house with a bunch of people that you didn't choose yourself. You're forced to do. So they work really hard. They're doing an amazing job over there being that close together, communicating with each other about their personal space. Those 4 have been pretty close together for quite a while. They're doing a great job. Have those 4 known each other for a long time? I don't know the herd. Yes? Okay. They're pretty familiar with each other. They're pretty familiar with how they communicate with each other. How long has this one been with those? The halflinger? A long time too? He was interesting for me to watch, I have to be honest with you. He's not as interactive with the other horses. Is that typical? Not as interactive with the other horses? Maybe?
I would say yes, but the newer black horse is quite interested in him.
Is quite interested in him. Is he interested back?
I think so.
Yeah, they were mirroring a little bit.
They were mirroring a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He was the one I had the hardest time figuring out where he was. The only one, and then I finally saw the one that he moved around was, so he's fairly low on the hierarchy, but now that black horse just lined up with him. As I was talking about that, the black horse over there. So even though they're not close together, those 2 actually, he made a very intentional decision to say, I'm going to connect with the halflinger. All right? So it's very subtle body language, but their positioning tells you a lot. And the red horse is slowly moving his way this way, right? To interact a little bit.
So as you were talking before, I was just right here. They were all together. And Nick, the one that's all the way over there, and Arnie, the biggest one that's all the way over there, both had their heads up and made eye contact.
Okay.
And Nick walked over, and Arnie walked over, and they just started, playing kissing thing over the fence.
Okay.
And then Buddy, the
Red horse.
walked over there and said, "Nope, don't want you there," and moved Nick's feet.
Move Nick's feet. Okay. Nick did?
No, Buddy.
Buddy. Okay. Okay, so that's a very good point. They're saying that they just put Nick, the black horse, back in with this group, and so they're
The red horse
the red horse just got back in with this group.
just came back into the posture with these horses.
Okay, so these other horses have been together a little more. Okay, very interesting. Okay, so this little tight-knit group here, these 3, with the red horse and the 2 donkeys, were just put back in with this herd for this morning's presentation. Recently, they have been in an adjacent pasture. Okay, so there are a lot of dynamics here going on. I'm definitely getting a feeling that the horse over there is feeling more connected with the ones back there, partly because of where he is, although he did make efforts to connect here. It could be because the 3 new ones are in, and that's changed this dynamic in here. Anytime new people come into your house, it changes the whole dynamic, right? He's been working for a few days, maybe, to develop a pretty good balance with these 3, the other 2, and then the new 3 got brought in today, so that changed things. But they're handling it all really quite well. But what I love about this is that the horses get to choose how much space, right? And so in my program, as we do herd observation, we'll do it outside first. I also tell them some of the history of my horses so that they understand that my horses do have trauma pasts, right? If you work with clients who have had either not a lot of choice in their life or have had any kind of physical assault, there's a lot of empathy that happens when they realize that a lot of things happen to horses' bodies without their consent. We strap saddles on them, we do their feet, we handle horses' bodies we try to be polite. We're taught to be polite, but really what we do is we teach the horses to be polite. More than we try to be polite about asking permission. And, that's because we have to do things on our agenda. I've been there through all of it too. But I think we have to understand, as much as we try to think about how our participants are having their experiences, our horses are our partners. We say that, right? We need to actually treat them as if they are. And what I find is whenever I stop and let someone know what the horses experience, or I see a sign that the horse is saying, I'm not quite comfortable with that, and I stop, the participants love it. They want to know how the horse feels. How did you know that? What did they do? So he's coming back in. Let's watch. But he's coming definitely toward the halflinger, right? That's who he's going near. And he was actually, as he was coming in, they had a little conversation. That's where he decided that was where I need to stop for now. And this is another thing horses will do. We walk kind of straight up the horses pretty close. They'll feel that wherever they felt that little bit of energy bubble, they'll stop. He'll wait there. He's going to see how the halflinger responds. He's going to see what else happens before he decides what his next move is. And this little donkey is heading this way. Maybe going to the hay pile. Hey there. It's like, yeah, I'm going to the hay pile. He was very social earlier. Seems like he's very curious about everything that's happening. But now he's letting the little female donkey have nice time with the red horse. I forget the names always. This black horse again just lined up with this group, right? This donkey is now saying, I'm going to join this group over here. So he actually wasn't really that interested in the hay. That was just a stopping point, almost like I'm transitioning from being with this little group over here, this band, to maybe going over here with this band. Let's see where he decides to stop. Think he's going where? For the water. He could well be. Took a turn. Yep. But he didn't go straight to it, did he? He kind of lined up with that one for a minute. I don't know exactly what all that was about. Now look what we've got. So one shifts, everything starts to shift. Energy shifted.
Is this the donkey that was attached to this one earlier?
Yep, they're very tight. So let's see. But you see how very intentional, right? And let's see what the dynamic is when we get there. That'll tell us a little bit more about it.
Your idea, but mine.
So he kind of said, and then the donkey said, but very politely, can I come back in? Are we still okay sharing this space? And they're very close, so he said okay. But there was a moment of, I'm not sure we can both be in there. So this is a limited resource, high value. They have to negotiate how they're going to share that space, and if they can. This one, he's waiting. He knows how close he can get for that to be again, their goal is peaceful. Elephants do the same thing. Both very highly intelligent social animals. So you see him asking permission. He's trying to read. So he's a new horse, but he's feeling pretty confident about being able to read this energy, isn't he? Knowing that the red horse is at the top of the hierarchy. So this is about the water, but do you know what else this is? This is an opportunity for them to get clearer with each other about personal space, about how they each communicate. But if this were a bully situation, if this were a dominant situation, that red horse would chase him off. Keep saying, move off, move off, move off. Are you listening? Hi. So do you see how the black horse keeps coming in? This is one of the ways we know it's not dominance and submission. Someone who is bullied, if I'm the bully, and you're not the bully, once I bully you, you stay away. You're like, I'm not triggering that again. Horses will keep coming back and asking the question. So very interesting dynamics here. He's moving that one off, right? Or that one's giving space. Now he's going to go back and finish his drink. He waited till all that energy got settled.
Did the black horse help
shift the energy on purpose, do you think,
Well,
to get back to the water?
So it could well be. Black horse came over, kind of was like, I'm going to act like Anya's really interesting for a minute. The others start coming over. Now they're not at the water. Who knows? Like there's all kinds of, I don't want to say games, but I think they play games. It's all about exploration of each other. Again, the halflinger is kind of just staying off. But look at this parallel almost, right? So they look far apart, but they're actually still connected energetically, but giving each other plenty of space. And as horses mirror like that, if you notice, so the body position is obviously the most important, but then you can say, how connected are two? If they, like, their legs are the same, if when they graze, their heads are moving the same, this is like they are really, really in sync, even if they're very far away, right? So these are things you can look at for how close are they. Question? Yes.
So when you say that they're aligned, so it has to be side by side or nose to tail. So like these two are, well, now they just pivoted, but they're in line with that chestnut horse up on the hill.
Yes.
So is that?
Yes.
Okay.
And even the other one, he's facing this way, but his body's kind of at the same angle.
Okay.
It can even sometimes, the most aligned is if we're facing the same direction, right? And we're kind of aligned. But that horse is, if you just feel it, he's kind of in the mix here. He's not totally off when we saw like a horse who's totally off facing a different direction. So he's connected, but not quite as much. He also may be connecting with Buddy. So let's see where he chooses to go now. It's kind of intentional, but I'm not sure what it is. But that caused Buddy to move. Hey, Buddy. So we're, 45 minutes into this session, and now Buddy's come over to say hi, right? That is pretty typical with sessions that I do. The horses almost always come over to interact at some point, but it takes quite a while. Anywhere from 15 to an hour. Some of you, in one of the sessions yesterday, we talked about 30-minute sessions. You can get some interesting stuff in with herd observation in 30 minutes, but if you want to get to where the horses interact, I typically do 2 to 3 hour sessions at my farm. And I do some individual, but I often do small groups or families. So with this kind of herd observation, you can do groups, and that's kind of fun, and you can get a lot of good interaction that way. Someone had a question over here. So the first thing we can do, if it's really horse-centered, is to take away that mindset of they have a job and that we have to do it. My herd is always together. I don't separate mine. I built my program it's like you have standards and you say we're going to build our program around those. Those are mine. Mine is my herd gets to stay together. It is stressful to separate any horse from its herd. There's lots of different energies. I also find that my herd will work as a team and with me now. And it's just different ones will step forward at different times. Sometimes one will come and interact for a few minutes, and then another one will. And so no one horse is having to take all of that pressure of being the one that's the center of attention. But, what you can do is give that horse back to its herd. Or you can do the work. I mean, it's a lot of work to unherd bound a horse, right? It can be done. It's a lot of work. But know that you're working against that horse isn't comfortable being by itself. And if it were a participant that was having that trauma reaction, would we just say, suck it up? So it's can we have the same mindset toward our horses that we have toward our participants? And although we get stressed that we think the parents aren't going to like it, or it doesn't fit our schedule, or we're not accomplishing what we said, I have always found that humans respond very positively when I explain that the horse is having a stress reaction and why, and they always want to say, let's fix it.
The other thing to advise when the person tries it,
Great.
always bring horses with because it is stressful. They are herd animals. They live in isolation and they don't understand you and we are guard all the time. So I think we know that we have things that we've created that we've said that we're going to do, like lessons and all this. But I think if we take a deep breath and stop and look at their side also, what you're saying, and say, okay, take it on as a challenge and say, how can I bring it together a little bit so it benefits both? So
Yes.
not being so decisive. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
decisive.
It can be a
Does that
win-win.
make sense?
It's
Like,
possible to have a win-win.
it is possible.
Yes.
You know, maybe not in every situation, but it is possible. And
Yep.
and I do think that you're right. I think that when you explain, that's for me that why.
Yeah.
If I explain to my participant, my parent, this is why we're doing it this way, 9.5 times out of 10, they go, oh wow, like they've learned something and they get it.
Yeah.
And you can even relate it to the human element.
Yes, you can always relate it to the human element.
Do you want to repeat that briefly so that the others can
Yeah, see if I can repeat what you said.
Summary.
Yeah, the summary was that, one, you never put two horses, there's always two horses. You don't ever separate one horse by itself. And that stopping and explaining the why. The why is really key. And that has to start with us being able to understand and admit why horses are having certain behaviors, right? If we just say behaviors are bad, then we're not going to be able to explain it in a way that teaches empathy or helps the participant have empathy, where then they say, I understand what anxiety feels like. I have felt like that. Or a horse that is way out there and doesn't want to come and participate. And at first, one of the things I love working with is that feeling of rejection we have immediately. Oh, I wanted the horse to like me or want me. And if I say, well, let's think about it, that's not necessarily rejection. That horse might be having a bad day today. That horse might not be feeling well today. That horse might have been overstimulated overnight. We don't know what went on last night in their small house, right? Maybe they had an argument or a fight. And as soon as you start just letting them know that horse is having its own experience and there's a reason and it's probably not about you, then suddenly they're like, oh yeah. I'll often ask them, do you ever feel like you just want to be by yourself? Yeah. So, anyway, really
10 more minutes.
Really quickly, so we have a horse that's very aloof and fearful, and we have a student that came in, and she actually picked that horse out of the herd that she wanted to work with because of the aloofness and the fearfulness. And one day we had gone through several sessions, and she came in and she said, you know what, he's so aloof, he doesn't want to connect with me, and so I'm done. Like, why should I always be the one trying to connect? Like, I'm just done. And this is so mirroring her life, right? And she said, you know, I don't want to be the one working so hard, and she's standing here, and the horse is free over there. And she says that, you know, he just doesn't want to do it, so fine, I want to respect him, he's aloof, I'm done. I'm laughing, and I said, you know, that's a great announcement, like, you've just said exactly how you're feeling. I said, good for you, like, you know, how do you feel now? She goes, it feels good to say that. I said, well, let's take a deep breath. So she was like, and hold the horse. And I just stood there and went, you know, and it was, right? Yeah. It was, I mean, it gives me goosebumps because it was so,
it is, and you just hit it. So we partner with horses because they're so amazing. We know they are amazing, right? And the truth is, most of us could not live in that environment and be as peaceful as they are. They are actually much better socially, much more emotionally intelligent than we are. When we keep them on the halter all the time and we're only doing activities and it's all goal stuff, we're not giving them a chance to actually show us how brilliant they are, and they can add things. My horses see things and know what to do. I'm blown away all the time. I'm like, you got this. Like, they show me what's happening and what needs to happen. They show me when the shift happens in the human, which you know, and that can happen when they're online or riding. But when they are totally free, there is something that is so much more powerful, because the participant knows the horse wasn't trained to do it. No, it wasn't being asked to do it. It wasn't forced to do it. It's happening voluntarily, and there's something super powerful about that when it happens. Yeah.
Right.
now we're going to talk a little bit about how Anja and how Cater has started to incorporate some of this.
Okay, so I'll try to, in kind of a short summary, explain how we practically try to apply this. So you basically now heard a lot about the what of herd observation, and I'm going to try to talk a little bit about the how. And as I said, we are in the beginning. These are baby steps we are taking. We've been a traditionally very riding-focused, traditional therapeutic riding-focused center for decades, and so this is very new to us, and we are also very careful to stay on the side of EAL and not cross into any EAP. So we are working with Brett at PATH. We have a local counselor that helps us, and we are in touch with Marilyn Sokolov to always be sure we know we are staying on the safe side and in the area that we actually know what we're talking about. So we started in 21 a pilot program that we called Connecting with Horses, and the guided herd observation is part of that program. So this is not a program that consists solely of herd observation, but the herd observation is a part of it. It's a starting point. And it's a great starting point. It's like starting at the base. So starting at really trying to get to know what a horse is before we even talk about haltering, before we talk about leading. And we have incorporated this in one-time field trips as well, with varying degrees of success, because it does take a good bit of preparation. And we have a few worksheets here. We have basically a self-guided herd observation for you that shows you how this can work and the level of preparation actually that needs to go into a successful session of herd observation. So, yeah. So we have definitely had experiences that did not really work very well.
Can you say what didn't work well about it?
Yeah, so I think there was not enough guidance. So the guidance, the whole what that you heard, in a way, that knowledge needs to kind of slowly be incorporated and be built up so that what you see makes sense. So I'm stumbling here a little bit because I'm not also entirely sure why it didn't work, but it just didn't work. And I feel like that knowledge base of, I mean, you're always interpreting. It's always, you never know if it's correct.
It's through our lenses. So if you're looking for this evidence of the dominance theory and herd hierarchy, that's what you might see without understanding the law. Like if you don't know some of the ethology, you can misinterpret what you're seeing. But
right, and then it's very quickly. It's like, oh, she's the boss, and you can't somehow get beyond that observation.
Well, that's also because as a human, that's how we are. So you can't expect humans to suddenly just brush all that away.
Exactly.
And not put our thoughts and feelings and opinions in there because we're human. So you have to understand that element.
Right.
You're doing great.
Thank you so much.
You get major brownie points for stepping out into this world and doing this.
Thank you. But we have worked with 6 participants on a one-on-one basis over 12 weeks, incorporating herd observation. And I just want to mention one experience I had with a visually impaired woman who is a very accomplished horsewoman who has bred and owned horses throughout her life, and for various reasons cannot ride at the moment. And And I was her eyes. So this, I was explaining, I was talking nonstop, saying this is what the horses are doing. And we've done this for 3 weeks, 45-minute sessions, working through the well-prepared sheets that we brought for you. And she said, I learned a lot about the animals per se and how they relate together and how they like their own space and trust each other completely. And she also expressed a feeling of gratitude for the time and although she has spent a very busy life with horses, for that quiet, non-demanding time with the horses. And so maybe what we've learned so far definitely is you need to allow 30 to 45 minutes of time, and you want to have kind of a roadmap, a little guideline through it. You can come to very different interpretations of what is in front of you based on the knowledge and the knowledge of equine ethology that you can work on throughout the session. You can start by looking for synchronicity, management of space, and management of touch, and just describe without too much interpretation right away. And now I'm going to go to the why. So why has this been so important to us that I'm now standing here talking to all of you about this? The benefits for us have been, so the life skill that is practiced here is observation. Observing. And observation is a very important life skill, and being a precise observer will lead to a safer program. So I'm just going to let this stand. So throughout all, like, volunteers, participants, barn staff, instructors, honing the observation skills will lead to a safer program. It will lead to better horse care, closer connections with the horses, a heightened awareness of signs of discomfort and stress in the horses. Contextual herd observation is a valuable resource for equine welfare and future programming within this field. And once you sharpen your observation skills, it will benefit program horses during mounted and unmounted lessons. So it will be beneficial also for your traditional therapeutic riding lessons. And I'm going to break it up a little bit. The benefits for our instructors were that we know our herd better now. And one maybe unplanned benefit is we find peaceful, quiet time with the horses during very busy days. And this speaks to self-care, burnout, and wellness of the instructors. And that can be either the time you take just for yourself to observe the herd, or a lesson, a session that is suddenly not, where are my 5 volunteers, 3 horses, riders, all of that is stressful, day in, day out. But then there is this island of peace. That's how it feels like to me. I know I have this lesson now. Put my chairs out, and we have our worksheet, and it helps me in an otherwise very, very busy, and we all also have a lot of responsibility. I'm sure that was mentioned yesterday in the burnout presentation, that our jobs are pretty big jobs with a lot of moving pieces. And these kinds of lessons allow, for a little bit of self-care in the middle of the day. Right. Benefits for volunteers, they will also know the horses that they work with better. If you can, we have not figured a lot of this we are still figuring out. So we would like to make this possible for our volunteers as well. It's an opportunity for a quiet time during their busy days, and they will sharpen their observation skills and awareness, which is necessary to ensure safety during mounted and unmounted lessons for the volunteers. The barn staff, they will, the same benefits apply to the barn staff, of course, of getting to know the horses better and in a different way.
One of our volunteers, but Carrie will often on her lunch, she stays here all day. She'll go out and she'll just, not be on top, she'll just hang with the horse. And the amount of times that Carrie's actually come in and said, I don't think he's, something's not right. He's not behaving his normal way, or he just doesn't look right, like something in his eye or his face. And, almost each time, she's been spot on.
Yeah.
And that's huge. I mean, and you want to talk now about corporate, the money side of it, right? So you're going to save money having these kind of observations, because you're going to jump on anything that could become an illness. It could be, I think we've had 2, almost colics, but because Carrie or another volunteer, observed something, we went out, we checked what was going on, we took them for a walk,
Eva said that for the barn staff to observe the herd and spend that undemanding and not just watching time, observing time, has helped to catch signs of colic early, and therefore also saves money. And horses, yes, of course, participants sharpening their observation skill. It's a life skill. Observing means safety. Before a participant can safely halter a horse, they need to be able to observe the signs, the body language of the horse, and before they can do that safely. Learning about the horse before interacting, again, makes for safety, for a safer environment. Herd observation increases feelings of understanding, empathy, familiarity, and connection with the horse. And I think we also throughout this weekend have heard again and again the elevated role and importance of that connection between a participant and a specific horse. And it's a wonderful opportunity, of course, for populations like the elderly or populations that for any reason cannot ride. Although I have to say that our participants just happened to be people who actually just didn't want to ride. They had a different thing in mind. So it's a mix of people who are counterindicated for riding, for mounted activities. And then, of course, the benefits for the horses, I think, are probably very, very obvious. There will be less misunderstandings between horses and humans. The horses, again, that are retired, are working, they can stay with us.
Can I actually add one other thing into that? Can y'all hear me? So in addition to the retired horses, if you have a program that's largely observation, or even a component of your program that's largely observation,
Okay.
I just wanted to say that in addition to horses that are retired, one of the biggest challenges in this industry is that there are not enough program horses, right? I know programs are always looking for horses that meet the standards, and I cannot tell you how often I get contacted, I have a small farm, of people wanting to donate horses to me that do not meet the requirements at Charleston Area Therapeutic Riding or anywhere else. This kind of program can be done with any horse. Even a horse that you can't, if it's not safe to go into the pasture with them, you can do it from outside the pasture. And these horses heal a lot, actually, from that, because most horses that are aggressive, it's because they have fear or anxiety about something that's going to be done with them. It's a welfare issue in the horse industry is, can we create programming that allows horses that are not the horse that everybody's trying to look for, everybody's trying to buy, that we can actually provide good homes and meaningful experiences for horses that don't typically qualify for some of these programs. So that's just another aspect. If you're a program that's interested in being able to address some of these issues in the horse industry in a positive way, none of my horses are rideable, and they all have a lot of emotional baggage that comes with them, and it's hugely healing for them. They have healed so much.
And as horse people, that's our responsibility.
It is our responsibility.
It's really our responsibility. And nowadays, because of, horses are living longer, right? I mean, it's not unusual to hear of a 35-year-old horse.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe however many years ago that wasn't the case. So we need to take responsibility for that. We need to look after.
It is. I believe it is our responsibility. And again, your participants develop personal relationships with the horses. So what message are we sending when a horse gets retired and we send them off, or they get injured and they're no longer usable? That participant may still want to have a relationship with that horse, even while it's healing, even while it can't be used in that way. They may say, I don't care about riding for these 6 months. I want to continue to get to know my relationship with this horse. Because we all know how healing those relationships are with a horse. Just spending time with them is hugely therapeutic. So, let you finish. Sorry, I just wanted to get on my soapbox about that.
Okay, there are just a few takeaways that I'll share with you, and then you're good to go. So just try it. You cannot harm the horses or participants by messing up an observation. Watching horses is always fascinating, as you saw today. You first think, oh, they are just standing there grazing, and then you realize within the 45 minutes they moved so much and changed their positions all the time. It's always fine to say, I don't know. It's interesting. What do you think? None of us have all the answers. So herd observation is an exercise in exploration and curiosity, made more meaningful through research and deeper understandings of horse-herd behavior. So I think that part of it, which Lucy Ree's book is one part of the research you should do, but there's of course a vast body.
Anja?
Yeah. And then, yes. So thank you for sticking with us until the bitter end. And now I'm going to announce that Kim has just published a book. Yay, congratulations. And of course, if you're interested, I'm sure she brought a few copies and will write an extra dedication, personal dedication just for you. Thank you for staying so long. What a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Nicole.